Did fellow soldiers get away with murder? We're about to find out. Welcome to another episode of the True Crime Remixed. In today's episode, we are covering the death of Private Denisha Montgomery. I'm going to play a little bit of this video of actually Denisha talking.
They choked me out. Look, they was doing it to me in the car. I kept telling them, I was like, I can't breathe. I was like, I can't breathe. I was gasping for air. I was like, bro, I ain't never been so scared in my life. I thought I was going to die in the car, bro.
Okay, so you hear her saying she don't trust them and she don't want to be there no more. So let's go ahead and dive into this. This is basically a case of the military investigating themselves and finding nothing wrong. Back in 1998, I had my own dealings with CID, and from this, 2022, I can see that nothing has changed. I basically went through the same thing that Denisha went through, that basically if we take it any further, I'm going to get charged as well for, me stopping people assaulting me. Thankfully, my case did not turn out as sad as hers. Okay. The players in this episode, okay, Kim has something, so let me pull her on. I'm going to mute myself and let Kim pop up. Go ahead.
What is the thought process behind you're going to get punished if you report the people that assaulted you?
Process is that for just to shut you up and then scare you, basically, when they do that tactic. I mean, you got to think about it too. It's the same way with the police here in Georgia. If you get into a fight, both of y'all getting locked up, or if something happens, both of y'all getting locked up. All right. That's what it is. Let me take you back down and get back into this. Okay. So the players in this are Denisha Montgomery, the 3 or 4 people who assaulted her. Denisha says that there was 3, but the Army says there was 4. There's a little bit of dispute with that. I believe Denisha, since it was actually her story and she was there and she told it to her parents before she was killed. So the people who assaulted her in her car, the Army, Denisha's parents, and Denisha's aunt, Tamika Light, who is also an Army veteran. Denisha was also married and had children. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information on them, but I just wanted to make sure they were mentioned. I think her husband is named Josh, but I am not 1,000% sure on that. So I'm just going to say her loving husband. Let me be clear about this. When the Army ruled this a suicide, that case is basically closed. From that point that they cause it a suicide, they still say they're investigating it, but I could tell you right now, once they decide it's a suicide, they're not doing much else. That is their way of saying we are done and not doing anything further. The same way they did with Private Lavina Johnson in 2005. And we're going to jump into the case a couple of episodes from now, but I'm bringing that up because this is essentially the same situation all over again. But basically, there was an assault, and then the Army labeled the death after a suicide. It's just crazy. Denisha Montgomery, or Nisha, as her family called her, joined the military in 2022. And although she was 25 at the time, it was a long-term dream. In the civilian world, 25 is young, but in the military, that is kind of old. Heck, when I joined the military, I was 21 and I felt old at that time because there's a lot of 17 and 18-year-olds there as well. And there is a bit of an age, I mean, not just an age gap, but a mental awareness about you during that time. And like I said, at 21, I felt extremely old. I'm sure she felt almost like a fish out of water, but this was one of her big dreams to do this. And, hey, she said, even in her video, she said, this is what she's always wanted to do. And she actually held up her flak vest, and we'll get into that later as well. But moving on, her aunt Tamika Light served 13 years and was a Purple Heart recipient. Purple Heart? I'm glad you asked. The Purple Heart is awarded for wounds or death as a result of any opposing armed forces, as a result of an international terrorist attack, or as a result of military operations while serving as part of a peacekeeping force. I'm going to tell you this, most people that have the Purple Heart are no longer living with us. So the fact that Tamika got the Purple Heart and she is still alive, big hool to her, because that's some badass stuff to get the Purple Heart and you're still alive. So Denisha's aunt was definitely a decorated soldier because Purple Heart is one of the highest that you can get. There are some higher ones, but that's like one of the highest that you can get. And 13 years is not a short period for being in the military. I have myself 14 active years and 2 reserves, so 16 years. And I feel like that was a freaking lifetime. So I know it feels that way for her aunt as well. I'm stressing this because Black women are often overlooked when it comes to serving in the military. So I'm trying to give her all her accolades for doing 13 years and Denisha's for going in and going into the MP company. I can tell you right now, I didn't want to be no dang MP because we knew what it took to be an MP in the military. No, thank you. Denisha kicked butt in basic training and in her MOS school, which is the School for Army Specialty Training. That's what MOS basically stands. I mean, it stands for something else, but basically it's the school, it's the training schools. Depending on your job, you train at different bases. For MP, she would have gone to Fort Leonard Wood as part of the 14th Military Police Brigade as a 31 Bravo. That's her MOS, and which is the Army code for MP. When I got out, I was still under the 42 Alpha side, which would be human resources. Let me tell you, no one that I served with really wanted to be stationed at Leonard Wood after training, men or women. It was a tough place to be because Fort Leonard Wood is also where that prison is. You know, if you mess up in the military, that's where you're going. So not too many people put that when you're picking your choices of the place you want to be. That's not one of the places you're going to put down. All right. The United States Army Military Police School is a multi-service base that provides technical training, for investigation, policing, investigations, police intelligence, corrections, instruction, and combat military police training. So everything badass is over there on that base. Basically, that's what they're known for. And they're not just doing it for the Army. It's for the Air Force, Navy, Marine, and civilian and foreign students go through there annually. So this is like, I'm saying this to say that I know a lot of people might look at, ooh, an MP, you know, a person isn't all that bright. Has nothing to do with your intelligence if you're going to be an MP to get through that school. It is rigorous training, and she made it through. And the school is about 20 weeks long. So about 4.5 months of school after completing 10 weeks of boot camp. For my military folks, do not shoot me as I flip between saying boot camp and basic training. I was one of those weirdos who was in the Air Force first and then the Army. Sad to say, but almost being sexually assaulted was a huge factor in my decision to switch over to the Army. I could not take it anymore, and I could not take dealing with the unit that I was in and nothing being done, and basically told if I keep following it, they were going to basically charge me as well. So that's one of the reasons why in 2004 I switched from the Air Force to the Army. A lot of people always question me, oh, why you did it? I give them some other reasons, but that is the true underlying reason for why I made that switch, for my safety. I did not feel safe anymore.
So you can understand how this young lady was feeling.
Oh, I absolutely understand it, and it gives me chills just, thinking about it. It's hard. So Denisha posted a photo of her and her unit on her Facebook page because she was so proud. I also noticed that she updated her employer to say Army and had videos of her being extremely happy in uniform. Shortly after Denisha was assigned to the 139th MP Company and sent to Germany, her return date was September of 2022. On July 19th of this year, 2022, Denisha contacted her family by video chat and told them to record the call. That's what you heard at the beginning of this. That was actually Denisha's own voice. In the video, Denisha is crying. She's saying, Mom, this is all I wanted to do. And she's holding up her flag jacket with the MP patch. You know, the flag jacket, it can hold, it has the MP symbol, but it holds, you know, like your utility tools. I'm trying not to use military jargon because I know what it's called, but I know it's just still hard because I don't know the civilian definition of it. So that, and, you know, it can also be, you know, like your bulletproof vest. Everything is inside this jacket, but it actually has patches and pockets and all type of things. But she was holding it up saying, Mom, this is all I wanted to be in the video as well. The video is about 12 minutes long. So I advise you, you know, after you listen to this, please go watch the video. It's on YouTube and it's gut wrenching. Her mother said, "What is that?" to the hole in Denisha's shoulder. And then her mother said it looked like a knife wound because, after she put the flak jacket down, she leaned in and you could see the bruises all up and down her arms. It was bruises on her inner thighs. It was all of that. And I mean, it was really, really bad. I know you can't see it now, but the wound on her arm was so huge. It went from like all the way from her wrist all the way down to her elbow and nearly covering her entire arm. So this girl was fighting for her life, basically. Denisha says she went to the water park with 4 fellow soldiers and had been drinking, which is not uncommon for military soldiers. So we're not going to judge these folks on having a drink because everybody do it. On the car ride back is when things changed. The video shows her demonstrating their hand placement up over her mouth. Like basically they had their hand up over this girl's mouth like that. And, she kept telling them she couldn't breathe. She was gasping for air. And she said she'd never been so scared in her life. And she legit thought she was going to die in the car. She also said she couldn't be here no more. She didn't trust them. She didn't trust her leadership. And I don't want to be here no more with none of them. Before hanging up, Denisha was clear on reporting the incident to CID, which is the Criminal Investigation Division. They ended the call with a plan. The family, I assume, was led by the advice of Tamika, her aunt, reported the incident to Red Cross. And Red Cross for the military is so important. If anything happens, a lot of people just think, oh, if it's a death or something like that happens, but it's not just death. Anything that happens normally goes through the Red Cross, and the Red Cross calls the military. And that's what makes it, official that way, that the Red Cross is involved for the military. Not even 24 hours later, the family received a text from Denisha that said things with CID did not go well. In the text, she said, I'm going to read it exactly as she wrote it. They told me if I report an assault, I'll be charged too because I mushed the female and bit the male that was choking me. Full stop right there. They told this soldier that was defending herself would cause assault charges to be placed against her. Basically, she was supposed to let 3 people attack her and just sit there and just take it. 21 days later, the family was notified that their beloved Nisha was dead. She was found in her barracks on August 9th, 2022, and the family states that they were told she was dead by suffocation. Her parents' first reaction was, how? How could you suffocate yourself? I have questions as well, because if you tried to suffocate yourself, you would pass out before you could even finish. I'm pretty sure your body would also fight for air if you're trying to suffocate your own self. She never in a million years would have killed herself. That's what her father said to on a News Nation report. No doubt in my mind, I know my kid. That's what her father said. The family states that no one in the Army ever asked them anything about the assault. Her husband, Josh, was interviewed, and the lawyer states that only when asked about her mental health, they only asked about her mental health and did not care about the assault. So basically, they're leaning hard into this suicide. Okay. They also received conflicting reports from CID. This is a quote from them. They said CID told us on the phone that night at the water park, 2 individuals that were not with her tried to sexually assault her in the restroom. Montgomery's sister, Jada, said the family was then told that the people who were with Montgomery, the ones who the soldier herself claimed attacked her, tried to chase down the 2 anonymous individuals and that they were trying to help her. So the Army wants you to believe that it wasn't the people that she said herself before she died tried to attack her, but these random other people tried to attack her in the bathroom. And then the people that were in the vehicle, those were the good guys, the ones that she was fighting for her life with. But okay. It is strange because I'm pretty sure Denisha knew who her attackers were when she gave the report to her family right after it happened. So I'm more inclined to believe Denisha's story than I am the story that was made up after her death. On August 10th, her family posted beautiful photos of her along with this statement. PFC Denisha Montgomery is currently TDY in Wasban, Germany. Look, I've been to Germany and I don't know that name. So look, forgive me on my German because I'm not. And TDY is temporary duty. For reasons unknown, 2 weeks ago, she was attacked by 3 members in her unit, 2 males, 1 female, and 1 female was actually her roommate.
Wow.
While riding in the car, they took her phone, covered her mouth, beat her maliciously. Miraculously, she escaped the situation. She documented what happened, but for even more unknown reasons, she wanted to wait to get back to the States, to Fort Stewart, before she filed a report. Basically, they wanted her to wait, but to get back before she filed an official report, after telling her basically if she continued, she was going to get charges anyway. Monday morning, they found my niece. This was her aunt who put this message, so I'm reading this. Monday morning, they found my niece unresponsive in the barracks in her bed. Suffocation by suicide. This woman in a million years would never kill herself. The United States Army is definitely trying to sweep this under the rug. This happens to female service members all the time. Now it's time it hits super close to home. How can we protect the world but can't protect each other when the signs are clearly there? I refuse to let my niece go out like that. And that was the statement from her aunt. Afterwards, the Army released a statement 5 days later confirming Montgomery was found unresponsive in her barracks and said the incident is currently under investigation by the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division. Tamika was not going for it, her aunt. Remember, Tamika did those 13 years. She wasn't going for it. She said, it doesn't make any sense. How are you still investigating when you prematurely said she committed suicide? That tells me that you've already have a determination. Her aunt also continued by saying something told her Denisha's life was in danger. She also stated, how was the Army investigating itself when they're the ones who called it a suicide? You get where I'm going? You called it a suicide, but now you're saying you're still investigating it. Okay. None of Montgomery's family believes she took her own life. Her husband, Joshua Smith, also said he knows that she did not commit suicide. Lindsay Knapp is the executive director of Combat Sexual Assault, and she represents Denisha's family, said that the military was too quick to call it a suicide. It wasn't until weeks later, when asked by the family's lawyer, that they even received a military casualty report stating the cause of death was pending. So they ruled it a suicide, but the cause of death now on the actual casualty form is saying pending. So it's a lot of fluffery going on here. They claim Germany were the ones who called it a suicide and that they were still investigating. So basically now they're saying, oh, no, we didn't call it suicide. The folks in Germany did. And we were just basically telling you that information. But the lawyer don't believe it, and neither do I. We got a service member who is afraid for her life and assaulted 21 days prior to her death, Knapp said on September 14th on the News Nation Prime. Knapp has also personally reached out to numerous military officials, but hadn't heard back at that time. In a more recent interview, Knapp said that the family was harassed for 30 days by the people Denisha said assaulted her. They were calling every day, wanting information, and just demanding to know what was going on, what the family was going to do. The family and lawyer reached out to CID for a restraining order, and nothing was done. So their daughter is dead, and the people that did it are now harassing the family. Later, the same people were photographed with the Secretary of the Army. They still had their weapons. Knapp once again said, how are they policing themselves? So basically, these folks who, even if you can't prove that they killed her, you can prove the assault because she said it before she died. She went and made it a report before she died. So you do have that, but now they sit up there taking photos with the Secretary of the Army. Never Alone Advocate founder Amy Frank, who is also representing Denisha's family, said that no one was looking into an attempted murder on her life after the reported assault. If leadership believed that she was suicidal, she should have not been walking around with a gun, which is true, because if they believe you're suicidal, that's the first thing they're going to take away from you. What I do know is none of this makes sense, Frank said on News Nation. What we're calling for now is that the FBI immediately take this case over, because what the military has shown us is that they are unable to take this case and give Denisha the justice that she deserves, Knapp said. Lynn and Michael Matthews, a couple featured in the award-winning documentary The Invisible War, shared their frustrations about the case as well. They said Denisha should have immediately been removed from the situation due to protocol, and I agree. If you feel like you're getting assaulted, and like I said, one of them was her roommate, she should have immediately been removed from the situation. That's just crazy. You going back in the room with one of the people that tried to help these men, that helped these men attack you, basically. That's what they're supposed to do, and they didn't do it. Whether they believe that this person was raped or not, they're supposed to follow the rules, and they didn't, and that person died. And they should find a person who didn't follow through on it properly like they're supposed to, and that they should court-martial, because they're destroying the military, destroying our national defense. They are worse than any terrorist in the world. This is also destroying the fabric of our military, Michael added. Sadly, the story is a repeat of Vanessa Gillen. I think that's how you say her name, Gillen. And other people that we've heard about in the last 20 years. You know, Vanessa, she was the soldier that was at Fort Hood that ended up dying, and she was a sexual assault victim too, and then ended up dead. And I'm sure we're going to get into her story later too. On August 26th of 2022, Denisha was laid to rest, and her family is still searching for answers. More than 130 U.S. military women have died in Afghanistan and Iraq, 50 non-combat related, 20 of them deemed suspicious, and their families have spoken out. Denisha will make 21 of that number now.
Wow.
14 of the deaths were reported as suicide after sexual assault. So there's 21, and of those 14 of them were reported as suicide after sexual assault. There's definitely a problem. Unfortunately, Denisha's case is currently unresolved, and as we get more information, I hope to provide more updates. And I could just say I'm exhausted from that, because as a veteran, that really hit home for me. Like, it really, really smacked me upside my head.
So let's back up a minute. I have questions.
Okay, let's go.
So she was found where?
In her room.
In her room.
Suffocated.
Okay. And there's a name for the room?
In the barracks?
In the barracks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for those of us who don't know what barracks, so the military provides this for...
It's housing. It's housing. It's almost like, it can be in the form of almost like, just like a dorm room almost. On some bases, they literally look like dorm rooms.
Okay.
But there's just more people in them that would be at a...
Okay. So I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
So they ruled it a suicide. They're not investigating. They found her in her room that she claims her roommate was one of the ones that also was involved in the attack. So are they not, have they questioned? Do we know if Do we know, because anybody on the outside listening to this would assume if I said my roommate assaulted me, there would be more questions.
Yeah, you would think, but no, they were taking pictures with the Secretary of the Army. So obviously, no, they're not. And then the fact that her and the other two people were harassing Denisha's family, obviously not.
So the Army just doesn't want to take this case any further. Bottom line.
I mean, they said they're still investigating, but I'm saying no. Once they ruled it a suicide, even if they claim that Germany said it, and Germany said it, you wouldn't have repeated it if that's what you were going to go with.
That's just
you wouldn't have never repeated that without doing your own investigation. You would have just told the family at this time, we don't know.
We're still investigating, and we
not after the fact. Yeah.
Wow, that's sad.
Mm-hmm. You had something, Kim?
I did.
Hold on. Let me put you back on here, and I'll mute you.
I was going to say the same thing that Kathy said in terms of where is this like witness report? The roommate was accused, and you would think They're taking statements. So where's the evidence of the statement?
You mean the statement that they took from Denisha when they told her that if we go forward with this, we're gonna lock you up for assault for defending yourself?
That's terrible.
That means that they didn't do a statement.
But even with that piece, what are the ramifications of her going forward? Like, what was she afraid of on that other side that she would have to deal with? Because my thing is, if you're saying you want to, basically at that point you're done, you're ready to get out. So then they're telling you, yes, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. So you being on that side and have experienced some of this, what is the thought process that, okay, are you losing something big, or what would be the mindset?
When it happened to me, my mindset was I'm not trying to be locked up in Fort Leonard Wood with them jokers, so I shut the fuck up.
So for something like that, you get locked up.
If they're saying that if you continue, they're telling you what they're going to do to you. If you continue with this, you're going to get charged too. So basically, whatever you're saying your abusers did, you're going to get whatever we're giving them. And as somebody that had been assaulted, no, I'm not going to get locked up. I would, just let me go. Thankfully, at that time I had been in the Air Force. I had already been in the Air Force 6 years. So I wasn't as new to the military as she was. But I found that loophole and got the hell on.
And also this, we talked about earlier how this was something that Denisha always wanted to do. And so the last thing I would think, is to bring dishonor upon something that's always been a dream, because now it's almost tarnished, for lack of a better word. I think that's unfortunate. The other interesting thing was, how is it that they blame suicide? Like, I kind of take offense to that. Like, that's the only straw that you can grasp, and it totally puts a negative on who that person is. That's unfortunate.
It's a lot to unpack with this one because it is so new. It's so new and so fresh. And one of the things when I first switched over to the Army, it was the same year that and almost around the same time frame that Lavina, I called her Lavinia, but Lavina Johnson was found, and her stuff was the absolute crime scene that they tried to say, oh, you committed suicide. So it happens. It freaking happens. It's easy for them to do. It's easy for them to just turn the eye, and they're already showing that they are standing by these soldiers. Like I said, now that those soldiers took photos with the Secretary of the Army, they're not, honestly don't see any repercussions happening. And I really feel bad about that. And my heart is breaking because that family is not going to receive justice. They're not. It's going to be closed case. They're going to keep getting blown off because we're the Army, and who the fuck are you?
Yeah. More often than not, I think people involved, they're going to slip up. It may not be this, it'll be something else.
Oh yeah. If they feel like they assaulted this woman and nothing happened to them and then committed a murder, you're not going to just stop with that. When something later on down the road, you're going to do something else. Mm-hmm. But it shouldn't be another time. And that's my whole problem right there. It shouldn't even be an option for another time. And that's where my heart is ripping apart at. That's the end of that episode. I mean, there's nothing more because we don't have anything more. It's still going on. Like I said, we're in October. This episode is airing next week, and which would be November. And yeah, there's nothing more, and it's just sad. So thank you for listening or watching this episode of True Crime Remixed. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at True Crime Remixed Podcast and Facebook at True Crime Remixed. If you enjoyed this episode, Give us a like on YouTube or those 5 stars on Spotify. You can leave an actual review on Apple. You can also support us or leave us a voice message on Anchor FM/True Crime Remix. Until next time, I'm your host, Omega Keys, and I'm joined by my 2 amazing people, Kathy Taylor and Kimberly Edwards, and this is the True Crime Remixed.